Today I'm watching another video from one of my favourite YouTube channels, Yurak Hunt, and yeah, I've said before, go subscribe to them. They make amazing videos about Australia, Australian life, very funny all the time. This one's called Australia's Greatest Criminals, so I thought that was like an interesting title, not like most infamous criminals, just the greatest, who are the best criminals. Interested to see this. Tell me, yeah, if there are any like famous, infamous Australian criminals that I should learn about, but let's watch this anyway.
Yeah, some days I feel unfazed.
Oh yeah, that guy I've seen before. The succulent Chinese meal. Oh yeah, I've seen that one before. I made a reaction to that, very funny. Yeah, some of those videos I've actually seen clips of before, but a lot of them I haven't. They look quite intense, but yeah, I guess a little bit funny. Tell me if there's any like famous Australian viral videos that I should make a reaction to.
A large chunk of Australia's population is only here because their ancestors were criminals. And luckily for us, over the last few hundred years, the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree. And that means that Australia has a large variety of different crooks. We've got some that are smart, some that are dumb, some that are gross, and just about everything and anything in between. But in today's video, we're going to be focusing on some of Australia's greatest criminals. And when I say greatest, I actually mean the ones with the funniest stories. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up, we have the world's slowest police chase. One day at 3 AM, this man from Queensland decided it was the perfect time to take his stolen tractor for a quick ram raid. So he decided to drive to his local motorcycle dealer, smash through the front door, and after a quick hop, skip and jump, he hooked up two brand spanker Kawasaki dirt bikes, chucked that bitch into reverse, and drove off into the sunset.
No way,
Except
man.
that's not quite where
I've
this
never
story
seen that before.
ends. You see, someone witnessed this whole ordeal and decided to call the cops. And due to the fact that he was driving a big yellow tractor with two bright green dirt bikes hanging from the front, it didn't take too long for the cops to find him. Now,
Yeah,
I've watched enough Farmer
sense.
Wants a Wife to know that a tractor is not a fast vehicle. But as you're about to see, the man behind the wheel of this tractor has been spending too much time playing Grand Theft Auto. Instead of surrendering like a pussy, he decides to do some on-the-fly weight reduction to squeeze every kilometre of top speed out of his stolen JCB. After running over his freshly ram-raided dirt bikes, Old Mate initiates one of the world's slowest police chases. But just because it's slow doesn't mean it's not entertaining. He starts off by brake testing the cops, and continues by taking a little off-road detour. He then finds himself driving along the train tracks, and as you can see here, it handles like it's on rails. So with that revelation, he continued down the train tracks for a little bit longer until he slipped down the side of an embankment and got wedged against a tree.
That is
now,
a
this man is
mental
many things, including an idiot. The one thing that he isn't is a quitter. Old Mate decided to hit legs and continue this chase on foot. At 5 AM, or roughly an hour after the ram raid took place, they found the man stripped down naked and hiding in a creek. And the most surprising part about all of this is that the absolute paragraph of charges that this man accumulated in that 1 hour window didn't even include drink driving, which means that this man decided to do all of that while completely sober. And with that absolute stroke of genius, it's time to get into our next story.
Now
this one is
insane,
much more
man. Surely there was some sort of drugs or something
20 years
involved.
ago, and that's the story of Tony Mockbell. Now, Tony Mockbell was in trouble with the police for a few minor things, such as murder and trafficking commercial quantities of drugs. Now, at the time that this story took place, Tony was already on bail for drug charges. But a
dresses
little
like a
birdie told him
banker.
that at his next court appearance they were going to try and do him for murder. So when he found out this information, he did the next most logical thing, and that was to flee the country. Now when the day of Tony Mockbell's court case finally arrived and he was nowhere to be seen, they quickly realised that something was a bit fishy. Tony Mockbell realised that such a high-profile criminal like himself wouldn't be able to just jump on a plane and fly out of the country, so he gathered up a crew and decided to sail from Fremantle to Greece. The journey took roughly 2 weeks, and for about the next 6 months he was a free man, until he was tracked down and caught in a cafe wearing this wig. Now technically he hadn't actually broken any laws in Greece until they realised that he was using a fake passport, which allowed the Greek police, which were working with the Australian police, to finally arrest him. Even though the only crime Tony Mockbell technically committed on Greek soil was having a bodgy passport, he spent 10 months in the Greek prison system, and for the entirety of his stay, the Australian government was fighting for his extradition. And after about 10 months of this constant beratement from the Australian government, Stavros at the front desk had finally had enough and said that we could have him. So they stuck him on a private jet and flew him back to Melbourne for the small price of $450,000, which of course was paid for by the taxpayer, where he and his wig were sentenced to 30 years in Geelong's Barwon prison. Alright, that's enough about Tony Mockbell. Next up we have...
I mean, those two first ones are like obviously very different, man, but they are very unique stories. That guy sailed across the world to get away, and he actually got away with it. That's, I mean, fair play for that one. The first guy in the tractor was just insane. I can't believe there was no alcohol involved. I mean, if you think about it like that, it must be some sort of mental issue then or something, but that is an absolutely wild trek or trip to go on, man.
Possibly one of my favourite stories of all time. The other day I was doing some research for an upcoming video on Australian news when I came across this story. This man that you're looking at on the screen right now, that I've covered up in some awesome clothes to get around YouTube's nudity policy, is a man that goes by the name of G-String Batman. But you see, a name like G-String Batman isn't just given to you. A name like that has to be earned, and G-String Batman earned that name. You see, roughly 40 minutes before this video footage was captured, G-String Batman was just some weird in his undies. But that all changed when one night he decided to rob an op shop. Old matey broke in and made a beeline for the Batman section, stealing a Batman mask, cape and doll. On his way out, he also made sure to grab one of these sashes that read Bride to Be, after which he made his great escape to the backyard. Old mate proceeded to dress up in his freshly stolen getup and march around in the backyard for 40 minutes. Now, due to the fact that this was all caught on CCTV and he was still in the backyard of the place he just robbed, it didn't take too long for the constabulary to get a hold of him. Now, there's not much information about what happened to G-String Batman after this whole ordeal. My best guess is that he got sent to Gotham City or rehab. But the best part about this whole story is this guy's reaction to the CCTV footage on the official 7 News report.
What a joker.
Angie Asimus, 7 News.
And to this day, just like the real Batman, his identity remains a secret. Alright, that's enough about
usually
G-Banger
hear who
Batman,
the-
because now we're going to get
the
into something
criminal
a little bit
is.
more
You see their
recent.
name, but I
Now,
wonder
this
why they
next
never
story
showed that
isn't
one
just
off.
about one single criminal, but a pair. And although these criminals don't actually have a name, I like to call them the pissheads on the scaff. In the early hours of the morning at roughly 1 AM, police started to receive phone calls about yelling and screaming. As you can see here, one of the locals captured these two guys fart-assing around. And what this police officer didn't know at the time was that this standard procedure, pisshead removal, would turn into an 8-hour-long siege. They started off by climbing up on the scaffold to get to the roof of this construction site. Naturally, the firefighters arrived with a cherry picker to try and get the men down, but that was all to no avail. After a failed attempt to call in aerial backup and stopping these tradies from getting to work,
When I rocked up, I saw them, they had a bottle of vodka with them, so I was just like, looked like they're having a good time. But obviously it's not safe for them to be up there.
they decided to have a quick 2-hour beauty sleep
When
and
they
then
wake
get
up,
right
man.
back into the action.
Okay, I was
Naturally,
going to think they're going to have some regret. In Scotland, we call it the fear. When you wake up, you think, like, what did I do? I mean, they're still in that moment, but I thought they would have had, like, maybe woke up and been a bit clearer. This clearly like shows that's not the case, man. A couple of absolute madmen.
They tossed some bags of concrete off the balcony and onto the road, and
Just
with that
adding
all
up
done,
crimes
they
here.
were ready to negotiate.
What do you make a deal? You want a full pack of cruisers?
After their demands weren't met, they decided to pack it in and came down back onto the ground. The ringleader behind the operation
try
gave
and
a
run
quick
away, though?
interview while in police custody.
Did you have a big night?
Even though these two blokes provided hours of free entertainment, all they got in return was a date with the magistrate. And on that unlucky note, we'll move on to our final criminal mastermind.
So what happened to them, man? Did they get put in jail? Did they get a fine? Did they become social media celebrities? Anything like that?
Before we do that, we do have some honourable mentions. First up, we have old mate Clinton for the crimes of waiting for a mate and drink driving. This bloke here for doing such a mean skid in his AU Falcon that he made it to the news. This legend here who copped a fine for farting at a police officer with full intent, Chopper Reed.
intent.
And of course, the keyboardist from Ocean Alley who stole the lid from a water bottle despite the fact that he's worth millions. Alright, now that that's over, we'll get into the police ankle breaker. Somehow this sharply dressed chap managed to garner the attention of the push bike patrol. But what he does next is insane. Instead of hitting legs like every other pissed idiot does, this bloke right here managed to somehow pull off a world-class ankle breaker. After sending this cop head over handlebars, he seemed quite impressed with his efforts. But Lieutenant Lycra was not laughing. Nursing a bruised ego, Lieutenant Lycra channeled his inner Officer Earl and chased him down like he was Flint Lockwood.
guy's so
And
loving
old
it.
matey almost got away with it until his fancy footwork finally let him down. As he hit the deck, he didn't even have time to bat an eyelid as Lieutenant Lycra came down on top of him, mixing him in the process. And unfortunately, just
Good
like every
policing.
other crook on this list, he was also charged. So with that being said, the lesson you can take away from this video is that crime doesn't pay.
No.
And on that bombshell, it's time to end.
They were. I mean, like, I've been like quite drunk before, man. But none of these things would have like even remotely crossed my mind, man. Dressing up as going in to steal things and just dressing up as Batman, walking around. The guy stealing a tractor, then stealing motorbikes with that tractor. Mental. That last one, but I don't know why he actually really got into trouble. I guess just running away from the police is not a good thing to do, but he was the one that got hurt in the process, really. So tell me what you think about all of these. Recommend any other viral Australian videos. I'll check them out soon. Thanks.